My husband made me sleep outside in the snow so his best friend could have our hotel room, and even now I'm not sure he understands what he did wrong. We'd been planning this ski trip for months. I'd saved vacation days, booked the cabin, bought new gear because Nathan wanted couples photos on the slopes. And when we arrived and Vanessa just happened to show up at the same resort, I told myself it was a coincidence because the alternative was too humiliating to consider. She was his best friend from work, and yes, they talked constantly. And yes, she always seemed to need him for something urgent. But I'd learned to live with it the way you learn to live with a draft in an old house. You just put on a sweater and stop mentioning it. The blizzard hit our second night and Vanessa showed up at our door saying her building lost power and she couldn't stay in a cold room. Nathan let her in without asking me. I said she could take the couch and she started talking about how small spaces triggered her anxiety. And Nathan looked at me with this expression I'd seen before, the one that meant I was about to become the unreasonable one. He asked if I'd mind giving her the bed just for tonight since she wasn't feeling well. And when I said no, he got quiet in that dangerous way and told me I was being selfish. I could see Vanessa watching us from the couch, not even pretending to look away, and something in her face made me realize she'd seen this before too. This version of Nathan who could make you feel crazy for having boundaries. I ended up in the hallway because it was easier than fighting, and I sat there on the carpet with my coat wrapped around me and thought about all the times I'd made myself smaller so Nathan could be comfortable. All the arguments I'd surrendered because his disappointment felt worse than my own. The conference room was unlocked and I slept on the floor. And in the morning, I went back to the room and found them asleep in our bed together, her head on his chest, his arm around her like it belonged there. They weren't doing anything. Or maybe they had, I don't know. But it almost didn't matter because the image told me everything about where I ranked in his life. I packed my bag and drove home alone through the snow, 8 hours of highway while Nathan didn't text once to see if I'd made it. My dad met me when I got back because I'd called him crying from a rest stop, and he wanted to know what happened. And when I told him, he got very quiet. Nathan worked at my father's firm, which everyone had always said was complicated, but which Nathan insisted was fine. And I watched my dad's face as he processed that his son-in-law had chosen another woman over his daughter during a blizzard. He didn't say what he was going to do, and I didn't ask. Nathan got fired the following week, and I know people think I orchestrated it as revenge, but the truth is I just told my dad what happened, and he made his own decision. Nathan called me crying about his career, and I felt something I didn't expect. Not satisfaction, just exhaustion, the heavy tiredness of realizing that even now, even after everything, he still thought he was the victim. He wanted me to feel sorry for him, to comfort him, to make it better the way I always had. And when I said I couldn't do that anymore, he accused me of ruining his life. Maybe I did, or maybe he ruined it himself one choice at a time, and I'm still not sure it matters who's to blame when the result is the same. I filed for divorce last month and Nathan contested it, claiming I'd turned my family against him, as if the things he did were somehow my fault for telling people about them. Some nights I lie awake and wonder if Vanessa was the first, or just the first I caught, and whether the woman I was before this trip would even recognize the woman I'm becoming. Harder, warier, less willing to make myself small. My mother says I'll trust again eventually, and my therapist says healing isn't linear, and my friends say I'm better off, and all of it is probably true, but none of it makes the nights shorter. The last time I saw Nathan was at the mediation session where he complained about losing his job and his apartment and his future, and I sat there watching him talk and realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, not even relief, just the strange emptiness of looking at someone you used to love and seeing a stranger who happens to know your middle name. I don't know what comes next. I don't have a revenge story or a triumphant ending where I win and he loses, and justice is served in some satisfying way. I just have a life I'm trying to rebuild and a trust I'm trying to recover and a memory of sleeping on a conference room floor that I don't think I'll ever fully shake. Not because it was the worst thing that happened, but because it was the moment I finally understood that the person who was supposed to protect me would always choose someone else. I'm sitting in my childhood bedroom 3 weeks after the mediation, staring at the divorce papers Finn sent over. The packet is thick, full of legal words that make my marriage sound like a business deal gone wrong. My phone buzzes on the nightstand and Nathan's name lights up the screen with another text asking if we can talk. I don't read past the preview that shows through the notification. My thumb hovers over the message for a second before I delete it completely. Not just dismissing it, but erasing it like it never existed. Something small shifts in my chest. Not quite relief, but maybe the beginning of it. Like my lungs remembered how to fill all the way up. I set the phone face down and go back to the papers, flipping through pages about asset division and debt responsibility. My mom knocks on the door, the same gentle tap she's used since I was little, and she comes in carrying a mug of tea that smells like chamomile and honey. She settles on the edge of my bed the way she did when I stayed home sick from the school, her weight making the mattress dip toward her. She doesn't ask about the papers spread across my comforter or whether Nathan texted again. She just sits there while I start crying about missing the person I thought I married, not the person he actually was, and she rubs small circles on my back until the crying turns into hiccups, and then into nothing. Finn calls the next morning while I'm eating cereal at my parents' kitchen table. He tells me Nathan's lawyer is pushing back on the asset division, claiming I influenced my dad's decision to fire him, and that affected his earning potential. The audacity of it hits me sideways and I laugh. Actually laugh, for the first time in weeks. Finn sounds confused on the other end until I explain that Nathan is trying to make his own choices into my fault again, turning his firing into something I orchestrated instead of something he earned. Finn says we have documentation of Nathan's performance issues that go back months before the ski trip, that we can prove the firing was justified. I thank him and hang up, still smiling at the absurdity of Nathan playing victim when he's the one who put another woman in our bed. I go back to work at the marketing firm where I've been on leave, walking through the office doors on a Monday morning like the last month didn't happen. My desk is exactly as I left it. Computer monitor dark, coffee mug still sitting where I abandoned it, but there's a small succulent plant in a ceramic pot that wasn't there before. A note card leans against it with Ariel's handwriting saying, "Heard these are hard to kill, like you." It's dorky and sweet and makes my throat tight in a way that sends me to the bathroom where I can cry without my coworkers seeing. I splash cold water on my face and stare at myself in the mirror, at the woman who looks tired but not broken, and I go back to my desk and water the plant. Ariel takes me to lunch at the sandwich place down the street and she doesn't ask about Nathan or the divorce or how I'm holding up. She just talks about her disastrous dating life, and the guy who showed up to their coffee date wearing a shirt with his own face printed on it. She tells me about the office drama I missed, about how Donnie in accounting got caught using the company card for his fantasy football league, and I listen and laugh and feel almost normal. The normalcy of it feels like cold water on a burn, that first shocking touch that hurts, but means healing is starting. That night, I open my laptop and start looking at apartment listings online, scrolling through tiny studios and one-bedroom places that I could afford on my own. The idea of my own space makes my chest feel less tight, like I can breathe deeper just thinking about it. My own locks that only I have keys to. My own rules about who gets to come inside. My own bed that belongs to only me. Nathan's mom calls while I'm looking at pictures of a place above a coffee shop, and I almost don't answer because I don't know what to say to her. Curiosity wins, and I pick up on the fourth ring. She apologizes for her son, her voice shaking in a way that sounds genuine. She says she raised him better than this, that she doesn't understand how he could treat me the way he did. I believe her because she sounds genuinely ashamed, not defensive or excuse-making, just sad about who her son turned out to be. We both cry a little before hanging up, and I feel strange about sharing tears with Nathan's mother over the man who hurt us both in different ways. Therapy with Mia gets real when she asks what I'm angry about, and I realize I've been so focused on feeling sad and betrayed that I haven't let myself be furious. I tell her I'm not angry, that I'm just tired and sad and trying to move on. She looks at me the way she does when she knows I'm lying to myself and asks again, "What are you angry about?" The question cracks something open in my chest, and suddenly I'm angry about everything. About sleeping on that conference room floor, about Nathan making me feel crazy for having boundaries, about Vanessa watching from the couch like she enjoyed it. Mia gives me permission to be mad, and it's like something unclenches in my chest, like I've been holding my breath for months. I write an angry letter to Nathan that I never send, filling 3 pages with everything I couldn't say during our marriage when I was too busy making myself smaller. Mia has me read it out loud in our next session, and I ugly cry through the whole thing, my voice breaking on words like selfish and manipulative and coward. My dad asks if I want him to stop giving me updates about Nathan's job search, and I realize I've been hurting myself with information I don't actually need. Every time my dad mentions that Nathan applied somewhere or had an interview, I feel this sick twist in my stomach, this compulsion to know where he is and what he's doing, even though it changes nothing about my life. I tell him yes, stop telling me, and it feels like setting down a weight I didn't know I was carrying. The realtor meets me at the address downtown, and I follow her up the narrow stairs beside the coffee shop, the smell of roasted beans following us to the second floor. The apartment is smaller than I expected when I walk through the door, one main room that serves as living space, and kitchen combined, a bedroom barely big enough for a bed and a bathroom where the shower stall looks like it was designed for someone half my size. But the windows stretch almost floor to ceiling along one wall, letting in so much light that the whole space feels bigger than it is, and the hardwood floors creak under my feet in a way that sounds lived in, rather than broken. The realtor tells me about the building's history and the other tenants and the coffee shop owner who's apparently very quiet, but I'm not really listening because I'm standing by the windows looking down at the street below and thinking this could be mine. Just mine. No compromises about furniture placement or wall colors or whether we need blackout curtains because Nathan can't sleep with any light. I ask about the lease terms and she explains the deposit and first month's rent, and I do quick math in my head about my savings account and realize I can actually afford this on my own salary without touching anything from the divorce settlement. I tell her I want it and she seems surprised by how fast I'm deciding, but I don't care because I've spent months not making decisions, and this one feels clear and simple and right. She pulls out paperwork and I sign where she points, write a check for the deposit and shake her hand, feeling like I just did something important, even if it's just renting a tiny apartment above a coffee shop. Ariel picks me up Saturday morning in her beat-up sedan, and we drive to the discount furniture store on the edge of town. the one with the giant inflatable gorilla on the roof. She's made a list on her phone of things I need and keeps adding to it as we walk through the aisles, pointing at lamps and side tables and kitchen supplies while I follow behind with a shopping cart. We find a couch that's technically tan but looks more like the color of old newspapers, and Ariel sits on it testing the cushions while I check the price tag and decide it's good enough. The throw pillow section takes up an entire wall, and I start grabbing ones that catch my eye without really thinking about whether they go together. And Ariel watches me pile them in the cart before gently suggesting that maybe I don't need both the bright orange one with tassels and the lime green one covered in sequins. I look at my selections and realize she's right, that I have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to decorating, because Nathan always handled that stuff, or we'd argue until I gave in to his choices. Ariel doesn't say anything about me starting over from scratch or mention that most of my actual belongings are still in a storage unit because I couldn't face sorting through what was mine versus ours versus his. She just helps me pick out normal colored pillows and a set of dishes from the clearance section, and a lamp that actually matches the couch, and we laugh about my terrible taste while loading everything into her car. The furniture store says they'll deliver the big stuff Tuesday, and I give them my new address feeling strange about saying it out loud, like I'm trying on someone else's life. Moving day happens on a Wednesday because that's when my dad can take off work and my mom clears her schedule to help. They show up at my parents' house where I've been staying with boxes and packing tape, and we spend the morning loading my stuff into my dad's truck. Most of it fits in one load because I don't have that much anymore. Just clothes and books and personal items that were clearly mine during the separation. My dad drives the truck to my new place and parks in the loading zone, while my mom and I follow in her car, and then we're hauling boxes up those narrow stairs beside the coffee shop one trip at a time. The stairs are steeper than I remembered, and by the fourth trip my legs are burning. But my dad keeps making jokes about my penthouse apartment, and how I'm basically a downtown socialite now living above a coffee shop. My mom organizes as we unpack, putting dishes in cabinets and hanging clothes in the tiny closet, and she doesn't comment on how few possessions I have, or how empty the apartment looks even with furniture in it. We order pizza for lunch and eat sitting on my new couch surrounded by half-empty boxes, and my dad tells stories about his first apartment after college that make my mom roll her eyes. They stay until evening helping me put things away and hang pictures and make the place feel less like a hotel room, and when they finally leave, my mom hugs me tight and tells me she's proud of me. I close the door behind them and turn to look at my empty living room, really empty now without other people filling the space. And I sit on my secondhand couch in the quiet and feel something settle in my chest that might be peace, or might just be exhaustion, but either way feels better than the constant anxiety of living in my childhood bedroom at 32. The knock on my door 3 days later makes my whole body go cold because I'm not expecting anyone, and it's almost 9 at night. I look through the peephole and see Nathan standing in the hallway, his hand raised to knock again, and my heart starts racing so fast I can hear it in my ears. He calls my name through the door and says he just wants to talk, that he needs to see me, and I back away from the door like he might be able to break through it just by wanting to badly enough. My hands shake when I pull out my phone and I have to try twice to unlock it. My finger's not working right because my whole body has gone into panic mode. He knocks again, harder this time, and says he knows I'm in there because my car is parked outside, and I text him with trembling fingers that he needs to leave right now, or I'm calling the police. The knocking stops and I hear him say something I can't make out through the door, and then his phone buzzes with my text, and there's silence. I stand frozen in my living room staring at the door and counting seconds, waiting to see if he'll leave or if he'll keep trying, and my chest feels too tight like I can't get enough air. His footsteps finally sound in the hallway, getting quieter as he walks away, and I hear the stairwell door open and close. I sink onto the floor right where I'm standing and pull my knees to my chest, my hands still shaking. But not as badly now, and I realize I just set a boundary and held it, even though every part of me wanted to open the door, just to make the situation less scary. I call Finn first thing Thursday morning and tell him what happened, my voice steadier than it was last night but still shaky around the edges. He listens without interrupting and then asks if Nathan threatened me or tried to force his way in, and I say no, but it still felt threatening just having him show up at my home uninvited. Finn tells me he's going to send a formal cease and contact letter to Nathan's lawyer today, that showing up at my apartment counts as harassment, and will look very bad in the divorce proceedings if Nathan keeps it up. He explains that the letter will make it clear that any further contact needs to go through lawyers only, and that if Nathan violates it, we can pursue a restraining order. I thank him and feel grateful that someone is protecting me when I'm still learning how to protect myself, that I have people on my side who understand why last night was scary even if nothing technically happened. Finn says he'll send me a copy of the letter once it's delivered and tells me to document everything if Nathan tries to contact me again. Save texts and voicemails and write down dates and times. I hang up feeling slightly less shaky and make coffee in my new kitchen, standing by the windows and watching people walk past on the street below going about their normal lives, while mine still feels like it's held together with tape and hope. The yoga class meets Tuesday and Thursday evenings in a studio 2 blocks from my apartment, which is how Mia sold me on trying it when I said I wasn't really a yoga person. She said the breathing exercises would help with my anxiety, and that I didn't have to be good at it, just willing to show up. I walk there after work on Thursday wearing old sweatpants and feeling self-conscious, pushing open the door to find a room full of people unrolling mats and chatting quietly. The instructor is a woman probably 10 years older than me with gray streaks in her dark hair, and she smiles when I tell her it's my first class and shows me where the extra mats are stored. I put mine in the back corner because I don't want anyone watching me struggle, and when class starts, I realize I was right to hide, because I can't do even half of what she's demonstrating. My balance is terrible and I can't touch my toes, and when she says to breathe into the stretch, I'm too busy trying not to fall over to remember breathing exists. But she walks around during class adjusting people's positions, and when she gets to me, she's patient and kind, showing me modifications that make the poses possible instead of making me feel stupid for not being flexible. The breathing exercises at the end actually do help, focusing on counting inhales and exhales until my mind stops racing about Nathan and Vanessa and the divorce and everything else. I leave feeling wobbly and sore, but also calmer than I've been in days, and I think maybe Mia was right about this being worth trying. Ariel corners me at work Friday afternoon and says her book club meets Sunday evening and I should come. I tell her I don't have time to read the book and she waves that away, saying half the women don't read it anyway and mostly they just drink wine and talk. She texts me the address and time before I can come up with another excuse. And Sunday evening I show up at a house in the suburbs carrying a bottle of cheap wine and feeling nervous. The women there are a mix of ages and personalities, some I recognize from around town and others I've never seen before, and they welcome me in without making a big deal about me being new. We sit in the living room with our wine and someone tries to start discussing the book, but within 10 minutes we've moved on to complaining about work and sharing funny stories about our families. Nobody asks about my personal life or why I'm here or anything that would require me to explain the divorce, and being anonymous like this feels like a gift I didn't know I needed. I laugh at their jokes and contribute to the conversation when I have something to add, and for 2 hours I'm just a person hanging out with other people instead of the woman whose husband chose his best friend over her. Driving home I feel lighter. Like I proved to myself that I can exist in the world as just me without my failed marriage defining every interaction. The grocery store trip on Wednesday catches me off guard because I'm focused on my list and not paying attention to who else is shopping. I'm comparing prices on pasta sauce when someone says my name, and I look up to find Jessica from my dad's firm standing there with her cart. She worked in the same department as Nathan, and I've met her at a few company events. Always liked her direct way of talking and how she didn't take anyone's nonsense. She hugs me without asking if it's okay, and says she heard about the divorce and she's sorry I'm going through it. I thank her and try to move on, but she stops me, her hand on my arm, and says everyone at the firm knew Nathan was being unprofessional with Vanessa. She tells me they'd have lunch together every day and stay late working on projects that didn't need two people, and that HR had talked to Nathan twice about maintaining appropriate workplace boundaries. I stand there holding my basket, feeling like someone just confirmed something I'd been afraid to believe, that other people saw what I couldn't let myself see because admitting it would mean facing the truth. Jessica squeezes my arm and says I deserved better than how he treated me, and I nod because I can't trust my voice not to crack. Walking to my car afterward, I feel validated and humiliated at the same time. Grateful that I wasn't crazy for being uncomfortable, but embarrassed that apparently everyone knew what was happening except me. My therapy session with Mia on Thursday focuses on the patterns Nathan used to manipulate me, the specific ways he'd make me feel unreasonable for having normal boundaries. She has me walk through examples and we identify the cycle, how he'd do something that bothered me, and then when I brought it up, he'd get quiet and disappointed until I felt guilty for mentioning it. Or how he'd frame his bad behavior as my overreaction, making me question whether I was being too sensitive or too demanding or too controlling. Mia writes down the patterns as I name them, and seeing them listed out on paper makes them lose some of their power over me, turns them from this vague feeling of something being wrong into concrete behaviors I can recognize and call out. She asks if I see these patterns in other relationships, and I think about my friendships and family and realize I've been doing this my whole life, making myself smaller so other people can be comfortable. We talk about what healthy boundaries look like and how to maintain them even when someone tries to make me feel bad for having them, and I leave with homework to practice saying no to small things without explaining or justifying my answer. Friday. I have my first good day where I don't think about Nathan until evening, and when I realize it, I feel guilty for not thinking about him like I'm betraying something by moving on. Then I catch myself feeling guilty and laugh at how ridiculous that is, that I'm literally feeling bad about not feeling bad enough. I text Mia about it and she responds saying, "This is progress even though it feels messy and confusing, that healing isn't a straight line and some days I'll feel fine and other days I'll feel terrible and both are normal." I sit on my couch that night with tea and a book and let myself feel okay about feeling okay, about having a day where the divorce wasn't the center of my entire existence. The apartment is quiet except for sounds from the street below and the coffee shop closing up downstairs, and I think about how different this is from the life I had with Nathan, how much smaller and simpler and somehow more mine. The mediation session happens on a Tuesday morning in a windowless conference room that smells like stale coffee and recycled air. Nathan's lawyer is a woman in a sharp gray suit who keeps her expression carefully blank while she talks about my alleged vendetta against my ex-husband. She makes it sound like I called my dad specifically to get Nathan fired, like I orchestrated some elaborate revenge plot instead of just telling the truth about what happened. I sit there listening to her paint me as this calculated person who ruined Nathan's career out of spite, and I feel Finn shift beside me in his chair. He doesn't interrupt, just lets her talk herself into a corner, and when she finally stops, he opens his folder and slides 3 pages across the table. Performance reviews from Nathan's file, all dated months before the ski trip, all documenting concerns about his work quality and professional boundaries. Finn's voice is calm when he points out that Nathan received 2 warnings about inappropriate workplace relationships before I ever said anything to my dad, that his termination was based on a pattern of behavior that had nothing to do with me. I watch Nathan's face as his lawyer reads through the documents, see him realize that his story is falling apart in real time. His lawyer tries to recover, starts talking about how the timing is suspicious, but Finn just keeps pulling out more evidence until even the mediator looks uncomfortable. The whole thing feels surreal, like I'm watching it happen to someone else. This moment where Nathan's lies stop working because someone finally has proof. After yoga on Thursday, I end up at the coffee shop next door with 3 women from class. We grab a table by the window and talk about normal things like difficult bosses and family drama, and whether the new Thai place downtown is worth trying. Nobody asks about my divorce or treats me like I'm fragile or damaged. One woman complains about her teenage son's terrible driving, and another talks about her mother's upcoming visit, and I realize I'm just part of a regular conversation about regular life. They don't know my whole story, and they don't need to, and sitting there drinking overpriced lattes while we laugh about mundane problems reminds me I'm more than just the woman whose husband chose someone else. I contribute to the conversation without overthinking every word, mention a project deadline at work, make a joke that actually lands. When we leave, I feel lighter somehow, like I just proved to myself that I can exist in the world as a person, instead of as a walking divorce story. Nathan's email arrives Friday evening while I'm making dinner. The subject line says, "Can we talk?" And I almost delete it without reading, but something makes me open it. He says he's been thinking a lot about us, and he believes we could work through this if we tried couples counseling. He frames it as his willingness to put in the effort, his openness to fixing what went wrong, his hope that I'll give our marriage another chance. I read it 3 times looking for the manipulation, and find it in every single line. The way he positions himself as the reasonable one who wants to work on things. The way he makes it my choice whether to save the marriage, putting the responsibility on me to either accept his offer or be the person who gave up. The way he talks about what went wrong without ever actually saying what he did wrong, like the problems just happened to us instead of being things he chose to do. His willingness is presented as generosity, as if agreeing to counseling is some huge sacrifice instead of the bare minimum you'd expect from someone who destroyed their marriage. I close the email and don't respond because anything I say will just give him an opening to twist my words into more proof that I'm unreasonable. Ariel texts me Saturday afternoon about a casual hangout at her friend's place that evening. She says it's just a few people watching a movie and eating pizza. Very low-key, and I should come because I've been working too hard lately. I almost say no because the idea of meeting new people feels exhausting, but something about the casual way she describes it makes me think maybe I can handle it. I show up at 7 with a bottle of wine and find maybe 8 people scattered around a small living room. Ariel introduces me to everyone, and I immediately forget most of their names except for Reed, who's sitting on the floor leaning against the couch and makes a joke about how he's too tall for normal furniture. He asks what I do for work, and actually listens when I explain my job at the marketing firm, asks follow-up questions about a campaign I mention instead of just nodding politely. We end up talking through most of the movie about work and books and this documentary series we've both been watching, and I realize he hasn't asked anything about my relationship status or made any weird comments about being single. He just seems genuinely interested in what I have to say, treats me like a person instead of a potential date or a project to fix. I'm not ready for anything romantic, but sitting there talking to a man who asks real questions and remembers my answers feels good in a way I didn't expect. I sleep through the entire night for the first time in months, and wake up Wednesday morning feeling almost normal. No nightmares about the conference room floor or finding Nathan and Vanessa in bed together. No jolting awake at 3 in the morning with my heart racing. Just 8 solid hours of sleep and the strange sensation of feeling rested. I lie there for a minute testing the feeling, waiting for the anxiety to kick in, but it doesn't come. I call my mom before work and tell her about sleeping through the night, and she starts crying these happy tears that make me cry too. She says this is progress, that my body is finally starting to feel safe again, and I realize she's been worried about my sleep this whole time without saying anything. We talk for 20 minutes about small things and big things, and when I hang up, I feel connected to her in a way I haven't since before the ski trip. Finn calls Thursday with news that makes my shoulders drop about 6 inches. Nathan has agreed to the asset division terms, finally accepting that fighting is costing him more in legal fees than he'd gain from dragging this out. The relief is physical, immediate, like someone just lifted a weight off my chest that I've been carrying so long I forgot it was there. Finn walks me through the details of what Nathan agreed to, and it's all fair, reasonable, exactly what we proposed months ago before Nathan decided to contest everything. I realize I've been tensing my shoulders for months, holding them up near my ears without even noticing, and now they're finally relaxing. We schedule the final paperwork signing, and Finn says this means the divorce should be finalized within a few weeks. When I hang up, I sit in my apartment and just breathe for a while, letting the relief wash through me. Book club meets Tuesday night, and I show up having actually read the entire book this time. We discuss the main character's choices, and I contribute to the conversation without second-guessing every word before I say it. One woman argues the protagonist should have left her husband sooner, and another says it's easy to judge from outside, and I find myself nodding because both things are true. After the official discussion ends, one of the women mentions she got divorced 3 years ago, and we end up talking for an hour about what it's like to start over. She tells me about the first year being the hardest, and how she didn't believe people when they said it gets better, but it actually does. We exchange numbers, and she says to text her anytime I need to talk to someone who gets it. Walking to my car afterward, I don't feel so alone in this, knowing there are other women who've survived their marriages ending and came out okay on the other side. Mia asks in our Thursday session what I want my life to look like in 6 months, and I realize I don't have an answer. I've been so focused on just surviving the divorce, on getting through each day without falling apart, that I haven't thought about what comes after. She has me close my eyes and picture my life 6 months from now, and I start describing things that surprise me. An apartment that feels like home with plants and art I actually chose. Maybe a promotion at work or a new project I'm excited about. Friends I see regularly who know the real me. The possibility of dating but not the pressure of it. Goals that are mine alone. Things I want to accomplish that have nothing to do with Nathan or proving anything to anyone. We spend the rest of the session talking about these goals, and Mia writes them down, helps me break them into smaller steps. When I leave, I have a list of things I actually want, instead of just things I'm trying to escape from. My boss calls me into her office Friday afternoon, and I spend the walk there trying to figure out what I did wrong. She closes the door and tells me I'm getting a small promotion with a raise, that my work on the recent campaign exceeded expectations, and the client specifically asked for me on their next project. I just stand there for a second processing, because this is the first good thing that's happened in months that has nothing to do with Nathan or the divorce. It's just mine, earned by my own work, proof that I'm good at something besides surviving. Ariel takes me out after work to celebrate, and we go to this nice restaurant I've been wanting to try. She raises her glass and toasts to my success, and I feel something shift inside me, this realization that good things can still happen, that my life isn't just about recovering from what Nathan did anymore. Reed texts Saturday asking if I want to grab coffee sometime, just the two of us, and I stare at my phone feeling panic rise in my chest. I start typing excuses and then delete them, type different responses and delete those too. My hands are shaking and I can't figure out why a simple coffee invitation is making me feel like this. I call Mia even though it's the weekend and leave a message, then sit on my couch trying to talk myself down. She calls back an hour later, and we spend 30 minutes discussing what it means to be ready to date versus being ready to just exist as a single person. She asks if I'm interested in Reed or just scared of being interested in anyone, and I realize I don't know the answer. We talk about the difference between moving on and running away, between being ready and forcing myself to be ready before I actually am. By the time we hang up, I understand that I'm still figuring out how to be just me, how to exist as one person instead of half of a couple or someone recovering from a failed marriage. I text Reed back saying I'm not ready for dating, but I'd be happy to stay friends, and he responds within minutes saying he understands and there's no pressure. The fact that he respects my boundary without making me feel guilty about it almost makes me cry. I stare at Reed's text for a long time before typing back. My fingers hover over the keyboard, and I rewrite the message 3 times, deleting words that sound too cold, then too eager, trying to find something honest. I finally settle on telling him I'm not ready for dating, but I'd be happy to stay friends, and I hold my breath before hitting send. His response comes back within minutes saying he understands completely and there's no pressure, just genuine friendship if I want it. I read it twice looking for the guilt trip, the subtle disappointment, the way Nathan used to make me feel bad for saying no to anything. But it's not there. Reed just accepts my boundary like it's a normal thing to have, like I'm allowed to know what I need and say it out loud. I sit on my couch holding my phone and feel my eyes get hot because this simple act of respect feels so foreign after years of being made to feel unreasonable for the smallest requests. I text back a thank you and he sends a thumbs up emoji, and that's it. No drama, no manipulation, just 2 people being honest with each other. Finn calls Tuesday morning and tells me the final divorce hearing is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. He walks me through what to expect, the questions the judge might ask, how long it should take, what documents I need to bring. His voice is calm and professional, and I try to focus on his words instead of the panic rising in my chest. He asks if I'm okay, and I lie and say yes because I don't know how to explain that I'm nervous, but also ready, scared, but also relieved, sad about the marriage ending, but desperate to stop being Nathan's wife in any legal sense. I want to just be myself again, whoever that is. Finn tells me I've handled everything really well, and that this last part is just paperwork, just making official what's already true. After we hang up, I mark the date on my calendar in red pen and stare at it for a while. 3 weeks until I'm legally single. 3 weeks until Nathan stops having any claim on my life or my choices or my last name. The night before the hearing, Nathan tries to call, and I watch my phone buzz on the coffee table without picking it up. It rings 4 times before going to voicemail, and I wait 2 minutes before checking the message. His voice sounds tired and sad, and he says he's sorry for everything, that he wishes things had been different, that he hopes I can forgive him someday. I listen to it twice and feel nothing except tired. His apology is all about him, about his regret and his feelings and his wish that things had gone another way. There's nothing in it about understanding what he actually did to me. No recognition that he made me sleep on a conference room floor, while his best friend took our bed. No acknowledgement that he spent our entire marriage making me feel crazy for having normal boundaries. It's just Nathan feeling sorry for himself and wanting me to make him feel better about it. The same pattern we played out 100 times when we were together. I delete the voicemail and put my phone on silent and go to bed early because tomorrow I need to be rested and clear-headed and done with all of this. At the courthouse, Nathan is already there when I arrive with Finn. He's sitting on a bench outside the courtroom and he looks smaller than I remember, worn down in a way that might have made me feel sorry for him 6 months ago. His suit is wrinkled and his hair needs cutting, and he glances up when we walk past, but I don't make eye contact. Finn guides me to a different bench and we sit and wait for our turn. When they call our names, we all file into the courtroom and take our seats. The judge is a woman in her 50s who looks bored and tired and like she's done this exact thing 1,000 times before. She asks us both questions about assets and debts and whether we've reached agreements on everything. Nathan's lawyer tries to bring up the job loss again, and the judge cuts him off, saying it's not relevant to the divorce itself. She looks over the paperwork for what feels like forever but is probably only 5 minutes. Then she signs something and declares our marriage dissolved. That's it. No dramatic moment, no speeches, just a signature and some legal words, and suddenly I'm not Nathan's wife anymore. I watch him sitting there looking defeated, and I feel nothing except tired and ready to leave. The same detachment I felt at mediation settles over me like a blanket. This person used to be my husband, and now he's just someone I used to know. Someone who happens to remember things about me that don't matter anymore. Walking out of the courthouse with my divorce decree in a manila folder feels strange and flat. I thought I'd feel free or relieved or something big and meaningful, but instead it's just paperwork, and the reality that I'm legally single again. Finn shakes my hand on the steps and tells me I handled everything with grace and dignity. I'm not sure I believe him, but I appreciate that he's trying to make this feel like a victory instead of just an ending. He tells me to call if I need anything, and then he walks to his car and I stand there on the courthouse steps holding my folder and feeling like I should have something profound to think about this moment. But I don't. I just feel done. I get in my car and drive home and put the divorce decree in my desk drawer, and that's that. That night, I take myself out to dinner at the nice Italian place downtown that I've been wanting to try. I get a table by the window and I order the pasta dish that sounds good to me without considering whether Nathan would like it or want to share or think it's too expensive. I order a glass of wine and I sit there alone eating my dinner. And watching people walk by outside, and I realize this is the first time in years I've made a choice just for myself, without having to explain it or defend it or compromise on it. It's such a small thing, but it feels bigger than it should. The waiter asks if everything is okay, and I tell him it's perfect, and I mean it. When the check comes, I pay it myself with my own credit card that only has my name on it, and I leave a big tip because I can, and nobody gets to have an opinion about it except me. The following weekend, my parents take me to lunch and we sit at their favorite cafe with the good sandwiches and the homemade soup. My dad reaches across the table and squeezes my hand and tells me he's proud of how I handled everything. He says leaving took more strength than staying would have, that it takes courage to walk away from something broken instead of trying to fix it forever. My mom adds that I seem more like myself than I have in years, lighter somehow, more present. She says during the marriage I was always a little bit dimmed, always making myself smaller to fit around Nathan's needs. I think about that and realize they're right. I can feel it in my body, this sense of taking up space again, of not apologizing for existing. We talk about my new apartment and my job and my plans for the summer. Nobody mentions Nathan except once when my dad says he heard he moved to another city. I nod and change the subject because I don't want to know and I don't need to know. That part of my life is over. I run into Vanessa at the mall 2 weeks later. I'm coming out of a store with shopping bags and she's walking toward me and we make eye contact before she can pretend she doesn't see me. For a second, we just look at each other and I wait to feel angry or betrayed or hurt. But I don't feel any of that. I just feel nothing. Like she's a stranger who happened to be in my story but doesn't matter to how it ends. She looks away first and hurries past me and I keep walking to my car. On the drive home, I think about how much energy I spent hating her, blaming her, imagining confrontations where I'd tell her exactly what I thought of her. And now that I've seen her, I realize she's not worth that energy. She's just a person who made bad choices and I don't have to carry that weight anymore. My next session with Mia feels different. We've spent months processing the divorce and the betrayal and all the feelings that came with it. But today she shifts the conversation to talking about who I want to become now. We discuss my pattern of making myself small in relationships, how I learned to read Nathan's moods and adjust myself to keep the peace, how I gave up parts of myself bit by bit until I barely recognized who I was. She asks me to think about what I want in future relationships and how I can recognize those old patterns before they start again. We talk about green flags instead of red flags, about what healthy looks like, about building tools for better connections. She gives me homework to write down my non-negotiable boundaries, the things I won't compromise on next time. I leave feeling like we're finally moving forward instead of just healing backward, building something new instead of just fixing what broke. At work the next day, Ariel and I are eating lunch in the break room when she mentions that Reed has been asking about me. She says it casually while unwrapping her sandwich, not pushing or hinting, just sharing information. She tells me he's been checking how I'm doing without being weird about it, asking if I'm okay after the divorce, saying he hopes I know he meant what he said about being friends. Ariel looks at me over her coffee cup and adds that he seems like a genuinely good guy, that she's known him for 2 years and he's always been kind and respectful and honest. I file that information away in the back of my mind for when I might be ready, whenever that is. Right now, I'm still learning how to be just me, still figuring out who I am when I'm not half of a couple or someone recovering from a failed marriage. But it's nice to know that when I am ready, there might be someone worth taking that risk for. I spend the next weekend repainting my apartment walls a color Nathan would have hated, this deep teal that makes me think of the ocean. I hang art I picked up at a local market, weird abstract pieces that don't match anything but make me smile when I look at them. Plants go everywhere, on shelves and windowsills and hanging from the ceiling, turning the space green and alive in a way our old house never was. Nathan always said plants were too much work, that we should stick to fake ones, and I'd agreed because it was easier than arguing. Now I water my collection every morning and talk to them while I make coffee, feeling ridiculous and happy at the same time. My mom stops by to see the changes and walks through each room slowly, touching the bright throw pillows and the mismatched picture frames. She tells me it looks like me. Really me. Not the version of me that tried to fit into Nathan's idea of what a home should be. I realize she's right. This space is mine in a way nothing has been mine in years. Book club meets on Tuesday, and we're reading a romance novel that Ariel picked. Something about second chances and healthy communication. The discussion gets intense when someone says the male lead is romantic for showing up at the female lead's work unannounced. I find myself speaking up, explaining how that's actually a red flag, how ignoring boundaries isn't romantic even if the intentions are good. The words come from therapy sessions with Mia. All those conversations about recognizing manipulation patterns and understanding what healthy looks like. Another woman nods and shares her own experience with a partner who couldn't respect her space, and suddenly we're having a real conversation about relationship dynamics, instead of just talking about fictional characters. I drive home feeling like maybe all this therapy work isn't just helping me heal, it's giving me tools I can actually use next time I'm ready to try again. Thursday hits me wrong from the moment I wake up. Everything reminds me of Nathan. The coffee maker we bought together, the route I take to work that passes the restaurant where we had our first date, the song on the radio that played at our wedding. By lunch, I'm fighting tears in the bathroom at work, and I can't even explain why today is harder than yesterday. I text Ariel that I'm not feeling great, and she brings me chocolate without asking questions. That night, I let myself be sad about it, lying on my couch and crying over everything I lost, everything that didn't work out the way I thought it would. I can hear Mia's voice in my head reminding me that healing isn't a straight line, that bad days don't erase progress, that feeling sad doesn't mean I'm going backward. By the time I go to bed, the wave has passed and I'm okay again. Tired, but okay, and I'm grateful I've learned how to let feelings move through me instead of trying to push them away. My mom calls on Saturday morning asking if I'm seeing anyone, her voice careful like she's worried about pushing too hard. I tell her I'm not ready yet, that I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm just me, not half of a couple or someone recovering from a broken marriage. She's quiet for a moment and then says that's wise, that the right person will be patient and wait until I'm whole on my own. I appreciate that she's not pressuring me to move on or suggesting I need someone to be happy. We talk about other things after that, her garden and my dad's new hobby of building birdhouses, normal conversation that doesn't revolve around my divorce or my healing process. When we hang up, I feel lighter, grateful that my parents are giving me space to rebuild at my own pace. Ariel texts me about a group hangout at her place that evening, just casual drinks and games with some friends. I almost say no because I'm tired and socializing feels like work. But then I remember my therapist saying I need to keep putting myself out there even when it's hard. I show up with wine and find Reed there along with a few other people I recognize from previous gatherings. We end up talking easily about work projects and books we're reading and this documentary series everyone's watching. He's funny without trying too hard, asking questions that show he's actually listening to my answers. When he mentions a hiking trail, he wants to try to ask if I'd want to join the group sometime. I say yes before I can overthink it. It feels safe, low pressure, just friends doing an outdoor activity together. Nothing that requires me to be ready for anything more than showing up and walking. The group hike happens 2 Saturdays later on a morning so sunny it feels like the weather is trying to make up for all the gray winter days. There are 6 of us total, and the trail is beautiful, winding through trees with views of the valley below. Reed walks beside me for part of it, and we talk about our families, the easy kind of conversation where you're sharing real things without getting too heavy. He tells me about his sister who just had a baby and how weird it is to be an uncle. I tell him about my parents and how my dad's been building birdhouses obsessively since the divorce, like he needs a project to keep his hands busy. Reed laughs and says his dad did the same thing when his parents separated, started making wooden toys for kids who didn't exist yet. The parallel makes me smile. He makes terrible jokes that have everyone groaning and throwing things at him, and I realize I'm enjoying his company without analyzing what it means or worrying about where it's going. It's just nice, being outside with people who make me laugh. My next session with Mia starts with her asking about the hike and how it felt to spend time with Reed. I admit it felt good, but I'm scared of repeating patterns, of missing red flags because I want companionship, or because someone is nice to me. She reminds me I'm not the same person I was with Nathan, that I've done months of work learning to recognize manipulation and understand what healthy communication looks like. We talk about the difference between being cautious and being so afraid that I never let anyone in. She asks what red flags I'd be watching for, and I list them easily now. All the things I've learned to name. Making me feel crazy for having boundaries, pushing for more than I'm ready to give, not respecting my no, making everything about their feelings instead of considering mine. Mia nods and says I have the tools now, that trusting myself is part of the healing process. I leave feeling less scared and more confident that I'll know if something isn't right. Ariel and I are having lunch in the break room on Wednesday, when she mentions that Reed broke up with his ex-girlfriend because she was controlling, and he needed space to figure out who he was outside that relationship. She says it casually while eating her sandwich, not pushing or hinting at anything, just sharing information. The parallel isn't lost on me. I ask a few questions about the timeline and what he's told her about it, and Ariel says he's been single for almost a year, that he spent that time in therapy working through his own stuff. I appreciate that he might actually understand what I'm going through, that he's not someone who's going to need me to explain why I'm cautious, or why certain things trigger me. The idea of being with someone who gets it without me having to teach them is appealing in a way that surprises me. Reed texts me on Friday asking if I want to grab coffee sometime. Just the two of us. No pressure. I stare at the message for 10 minutes trying to decide if I'm ready for this, if coffee with someone counts as a date, or if it's still just friends. Finally, I text back saying yes, and we make plans for Sunday afternoon at a cafe downtown. The coffee turns into 3 hours of talking about everything and nothing, books and movies and childhood memories and what we want from life. He asks about my divorce without prying, just a gentle question about whether I'm doing okay, and I give him the short version without all the painful details. He shares about his own difficult breakup, how his ex used to check his phone and get angry if he made plans without her, how he didn't realize it was wrong until he was out of it and could see clearly. The conversation feels balanced in a way my talks with Nathan never were, both of us sharing and listening in equal measure. When we leave, I realize my face hurts from smiling so much. Reed texts me that evening saying he had a great time and would like to do it again. No pressure. I screenshot the message and send it to Mia with the caption asking if this is what normal looks like. She responds with a laughing face and writes back that yes, this is healthy communication. Someone expressing interest while respecting my autonomy to decide. I read the exchange 3 times and feel something like hope starting to build in my chest. Careful and fragile, but real. I mentioned to my parents over Sunday brunch that I've been spending time with someone, keeping my voice casual like it's not a big deal, even though my heart is doing this weird flutter thing. My dad puts down his fork and leans back in his chair with that look he gets when he's about to go into protective mode. He starts asking questions about Reed's job and where he's from and what his intentions are, and I can see my mom trying not to smile because she knows this routine too. She jumps in with gentler questions about how we met and what we like to do together, and I tell them about the hiking and the coffee dates and how he makes me laugh. They exchange one of those parent looks that says they're having a whole conversation without words, and then my mom reaches across the table to squeeze my hand. She says they can tell I'm being careful this time, that I seem more sure of myself, and my dad adds that they trust me to make good choices. Hearing that feels like getting permission I didn't know I needed, like they're telling me it's okay to try again even after everything with Nathan went so wrong. We finish brunch and my dad hugs me extra tight on the way out, whispering that anyone who doesn't treat me right will answer to him. And I laugh, but I also kind of want to cry because I finally have people in my corner who mean it. Reed and I go to see a horror movie on Friday night and I spend half of it with my eyes covered because jump scares make me yelp like an idiot. He reaches over and takes my hand during the really scary parts, not making a big deal about it, just letting me squeeze his fingers when something creepy happens on screen. Afterward, we grab ice cream and walk around downtown talking about whether the ending made sense or if it was one of those movies that tries too hard to be clever. He says he actually liked that it wasn't too neat, that the main character didn't get a perfect resolution because real life is messier than movies usually show. I find myself nodding and saying, that's exactly how I feel about my own life right now. Messy but moving forward, and he gets this look on his face like he really understands what I mean. We sit on a bench outside the ice cream shop and he tells me about his ex and how she used to need to control everything he did and how it took him months after they broke up to realize that wasn't normal. I share a little more about Nathan and the conference room floor and how sometimes I still wake up thinking I'm back there, and Reed doesn't try to fix it or tell me I should be over it by now. He just listens and then says he's sorry I went through that, and we sit there eating our melting ice cream while the streetlights come on around us. Mia starts our next session by asking if I've thought about what comes after regular therapy, and the question catches me off guard, even though I probably should have seen it coming. She explains that I've done the hard work of processing the divorce and rebuilding my sense of self, that I've learned the tools I need to recognize unhealthy patterns and set boundaries. The idea of not seeing her every week scares me, because these sessions have been my safety net for months, the one place where I can say anything without worrying about being judged. But she's right that I can't stay in therapy forever, that at some point I need to practice living without that weekly check-in to catch me if I fall. We talk about transitioning to as-needed sessions, where I can call her if something comes up, but I'm not locked into the weekly schedule. It feels like being asked to swim without floaties when I'm still not totally sure I won't drown, but I also know that staying too long would just be another way of being afraid. I tell her I think I'm ready, even though I'm not completely sure, and she smiles and says, "That's exactly the right answer. That being ready doesn't mean being certain." Our last regular session happens the following week, and I cry before we even really get started because endings are hard, even when they're good ones. Mia tells me she's seen remarkable growth in me since that first appointment where I could barely get through describing what happened without breaking down. She says I came in broken and I'm leaving whole, that I've learned being strong doesn't mean never being hurt. It means learning how to heal. I thank her for helping me find myself again, for teaching me that Nathan's voice in my head telling me I was selfish and unreasonable wasn't the truth. She reminds me that I did the actual work, that she just provided the space for me to figure things out. But I know that's not entirely true because I wouldn't have made it this far without her. We hug at the end, and she tells me her door is always open if I need her, and I walk out of her office feeling sad and proud and terrified all at once. The parking lot looks the same as it always does, but somehow everything feels different, like I'm stepping into a version of my life where I have to trust myself completely. Reed asks me to dinner at this little Italian place near his apartment, and halfway through the meal he gets this nervous look and says he wants to talk about something. My stomach drops because those words have never meant anything good in my experience, but then he asks if I want to make things official and be exclusive. I stare at him for a second, because I was expecting something bad, and got something good instead, and then I say yes, because it feels right, and I trust myself now to recognize if it stops feeling right. He grins and reaches across the table for my hand, and I realize we're sitting in the same restaurant where I took myself to dinner right after the divorce was finalized. The symmetry feels meaningful somehow, like I'm closing one chapter and starting another in the exact same spot. We order dessert to celebrate, and Reed tells me he's been wanting to ask for weeks, but didn't want to pressure me, and I appreciate that he waited until I was ready, instead of pushing for what he wanted. The tiramisu tastes better than I remember, and the wine makes me warm and relaxed. And when we leave, I feel like maybe I'm finally getting this whole moving forward thing right. I bring Reed to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, and my dad immediately goes into protective father mode, asking him about his job and his family, and whether he's serious about me. Reed handles it perfectly, answering every question with humor and respect, never getting defensive or annoyed even when my dad asks if he's planning to stick around, or if this is just casual. My mom pulls me into the kitchen while they're talking and whispers that he seems lovely, that she can see why I like him. I watch through the doorway as Reed laughs at one of my dad's terrible jokes, and my dad's shoulders relax a little, and I feel this surge of gratitude that I chose someone who can handle my family's intensity. We eat dinner, and Reed tells stories about his work that have my mom laughing and my dad nodding along, and by the time dessert comes out, I can tell they approve. My dad shakes Reed's hand on the way out and tells him he's welcome back anytime, which is dad speak for you passed the test, and Reed squeezes my hand in the car afterward looking relieved. Ariel corners me in the break room on Monday and says she's never seen me this happy, that I'm lighter somehow, more present. I ask what she means, and she says I used to have this hunted look like I was always waiting for something bad to happen, but now I laugh more easily and speak up in meetings without second-guessing myself. I realize she's right, that somewhere along the way I stopped apologizing for taking up space and started just existing without constantly checking if that was okay. She hugs me and says she's proud of me for doing the work to get here, and I hug her back thinking about how lucky I am to have friends who stuck around through the messy parts. We eat our sandwiches and talk about her latest dating disaster, and I give her advice about red flags and boundaries, and it feels good to be the one helping instead of always needing help. I'm at the grocery store picking up ingredients for dinner when I turn down the cereal aisle and almost run my cart into Nathan's mom. We both freeze for a second, and I'm ready for it to be awkward or painful, but she smiles and asks how I'm doing. I tell her I'm good, really good actually, and she says she's glad to hear it. She tells me Nathan moved to another city for a fresh start, somewhere in the Midwest where he got a new job, and I feel this weird mix of relief and sadness hearing that. She hugs me right there in the middle of the store and says she's sorry for how everything turned out, that she wishes her son had been better to me. I tell her I hope Nathan finds what he needs, and I mean it. Not because I've forgiven everything, but because carrying around anger was exhausting, and I'm tired of being tired. We say goodbye, and I finish my shopping feeling lighter, like running into her was the universe's way of telling me I can finally let go. Reed and I take a weekend trip to the mountains, and I'm nervous the whole drive up because the last time I was in the snow, everything fell apart. We check into a cabin that's nothing like the resort where Nathan and Vanessa ruined everything, and I tell Reed the full story without holding back any of the painful details. He listens without interrupting or trying to fix it, just letting me talk until I run out of words, and then he says he's sorry I went through that. We bundle up and go outside, and he starts building a snowman, acting silly and making voices for it until I'm laughing so hard my stomach hurts. We have a snowball fight, and I nail him right in the face, and he chases me around the cabin yard until we're both out of breath and covered in snow. That night, we drink hot chocolate by the fireplace, and I realize he's helping me create new winter memories that are just ours, not tainted by Nathan or Vanessa or any of that mess. I fall asleep feeling safe and happy, and when I wake up in the morning with Reed's arm around me, I don't panic or pull away. Book club meets on Thursday, and we're reading a memoir about a woman who rebuilt her life after losing everything in a house fire. The discussion gets deep and emotional as we talk about what it means to start over after loss, and I find myself sharing pieces of my story with these women who've become real friends. They respond with their own experiences of divorce and death and failure and starting fresh, and I'm struck by how universal this is. How many of us have had to find ourselves again after being lost. One woman talks about her husband leaving her for someone younger, and another describes losing her business and having to start from zero, and we all sit there nodding and crying and laughing because we get it. We understand what it's like to have your life fall apart, and then have to pick up the pieces and build something new from the rubble. The book club host pours more wine, and someone makes a toast to resilience and second chances. And I raise my glass thinking about how far I've come from that conference room floor to this living room full of women who see me and accept me exactly as I am. My parents show up at my apartment on a Thursday night carrying grocery bags and a bottle of wine. Mom insists on helping me cook even though the kitchen is barely big enough for one person, so we end up bumping into each other and laughing while Dad sets the table in the living room. We make pasta with too much garlic and a salad that's mostly just tomatoes because I forgot to buy lettuce, and when we sit down to eat, Mom says this is nicer than all those formal dinners Nathan used to plan. Dad agrees and says this feels more like me, more real, and I look around at my mismatched plates and the candle I bought at the dollar store and realize he's right. This life is actually mine in a way nothing with Nathan ever was. We eat and talk about normal things like work and Mom's book club and Dad's golf game, and nobody mentions the divorce or Nathan or any of that mess. After dinner, they help me wash dishes, and Dad hugs me before they leave, telling me he's proud of how I've rebuilt my life. I close the door behind them and sit on my couch feeling full in a way that has nothing to do with the pasta. Reed comes over the next night, and we're sitting on that same couch watching a movie when he pauses it and turns to me. He says he needs to tell me something, and my stomach drops because that phrase never means anything good. But then he says he's falling in love with me, and I don't panic or pull away. I tell him I'm falling for him too, and the words come out easier than I expected, like they've been sitting there waiting for the right moment. He kisses me, and it feels safe and exciting at the same time, like I'm choosing joy without forgetting the lessons I learned from pain. We finish the movie, but I don't remember what happens because I'm too busy thinking about how different this feels from anything I had with Nathan. Reed leaves around midnight, and I stay up for another hour just sitting in the quiet of my apartment feeling grateful for second chances. I write a letter to my past self the following morning, the woman sleeping on that conference room floor 6 months ago. I tell her that she survives this and comes out stronger. I tell her that leaving is the right choice, that she deserves someone who puts her first, that she'll learn to trust herself again. I tell her about the apartment and the divorce and Reed and how none of it fixes everything but all of it helps. I seal it and put it in my drawer as a reminder of how far I've come, how much I've changed since that night in the snow. Looking at the envelope makes me feel proud of myself in a way I haven't felt in years. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I'm sitting on my couch with Reed watching another movie. My apartment full of plants and art and life. The succulent from work has multiplied into a whole windowsill of green things that somehow haven't died yet. Reed's arm is around me, and I realize I'm genuinely happy. Not perfectly healed or completely over everything, but happy in a real way that comes from knowing myself and choosing people who respect me. The memory of that conference room floor still exists, but it's just one part of my story now, not the whole thing, and I'm finally okay with that.